Right, has anything come through yet? Right, okay, I'm assuming you can all hear me now. Something very strange happened, because how this works is my monitor has a feed on here, so I can check that it's coming through, and it was coming through fine on there, and that's the delayed feed at YouTube that I'm looking at. But for some reason it was saying that it wasn't live even though I'd got the feed there. So what happened, I really don't know on that. So let me rewind back to the beginning and start this all over again. Hello folks, good evening and welcome to the live stream take 2 after the short technical hitch where for some reason it appeared to have dropped out on YouTube. Let's go right back to the start on this and we will begin again. Yeah, a few people still struggling with this. Yeah. That's right, Gary, I'm blaming the Cybermen on it. Yeah, everything just dropped out. Anyway, welcome to the show, folks. Sorry about the technical hitch at the start. Not quite sure why it dropped out at the YouTube end on there, because my feed was definitely working. It looks like I've lost a few viewers in the process. Really sorry, folks. If you come back, I am here on that. Right. Let me just explain for the benefit of anyone who doesn't know, weekly live feeds, they stay on here for a week or so in theory, it tends to be a bit longer at the moment, and then they get cut down to extracts on there. Please ask questions in chat. I have got two sections for Q&A and I haven't got any questions for them yet other than yes, why isn't the live feed working on there. If you're watching this on the replay, then please put your questions in the chat, in the comments field. Sorry. Oh dear, it's going to be one of those nights. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe on YouTube, add comments on my videos because that will really help me promote the channel, and please like the YouTube videos on there, and if you can, please share details about the show. As ever, I'm still looking for people for the 3-minute Lightroom challenge. We've got a few videos in hand, or a few images in hand, from people who've had 1 or 2 images done already. I'd like to try and get some newbies in there. Rick and I are going to be doing recording sessions for our edits later this week. So if you are interested in submitting, please get them in this week, Tuesday at the latest. I'm looking for raw files for this to work realistically. Ideally, if you want to submit the edited version as well, preferably zipped up so we can't see it, because we like to come into them having not seen the images beforehand. So do let us have some if you've not taken part in it. I know we've got quite a few people here who haven't, so please let me have some images for that on there. Still looking for 1 or 2 volunteers for the showcase. Got a couple of people who said they will do them at some point, but they're busy at the moment. But anyone else who's interested, please get in touch and I can send you all the questions and the details on that. Right, so what have we got on the show this week? We've got our usual news section. We've got a Tiny Planets tutorial coming up, and I'll show you how we create those images and the story behind them. I've got some feedback on some images. The 3-minute challenge is here, and we'll look at some of your images from the Facebook group and live Q&A if I have some questions. So, what's been going on this week? The news. I've only published a couple of videos this week. The next one in the 7 Deadly Sins of Photography went live yesterday or today, and that was on the subject of greed on there. And earlier in the week, one of my 2-minute Lightroom tips, all about showing and hiding parent folders on there to keep the organization sensible. On that, the live streams, as well, as I did say, but I think it was in the bit when the stream wasn't running properly, everything's been pushed back 1 week, so I couldn't do the focus stacking one this week because of personal reasons. I'd scheduled to do some of the pre-recording that's needed for that yesterday, but my wife's got an eye infection and I was on taxi duty, going between optician and pharmacy and hospital with her, so it just didn't happen. Everything's fine. I should be able to finish all that ready for next week on there. Facebook groups. If you're not aware and not a member of my Facebook group, please do join, because we have some interesting conversations going on there during the week, and it's a place where you can submit images, you can post images, and I'll pick up a few of them to talk about them on the live stream, as I will be doing tonight with that. So share your photos there. I'm asking at the moment for macro ones ready for, well, what should have been this week, what will be next week. So put them there. There's also the blog topic list. So if you've got particular topics you want me to cover, have a look at that list, see if anything jumps out to you, and I will prioritize those. And of course, I'll keep you up to date with any changes to the schedule for the live feed and anything else that's going on. I also have a newsletter. If you've not signed up for that, you can do so on my website. The link to that is down below in the description for the video. What other news? Well, I've just picked one this week, and it's bye-bye Olympus. Olympus, after many years of being a big name in photography, are selling off their imaging arm. So it's the end of their camera business. Do we have any Olympus users on the stream? Is anyone particularly bothered at Olympus getting out of the market? What I do find interesting about Olympus is one of the reasons they gave is camera phones. They said that they're leaving the market because nobody wants compacts anymore, and that was a sort of big area of theirs, was the smaller cameras, and the phone market has taken that away from them. So I thought that was quite interesting. It doesn't affect me. I haven't got any Olympus kit. I had no plans to buy any, but again, it's just sad to see a big name go. It's part of our photographic heritage that's gone by the wayside. Hopefully somebody will buy out that part of their business, and the name will live on under other ownership. I see Ron is an Olympus user. He has the E410 from the chat, and welcome Richard. Nice to see you on the chat tonight. So, talking of Rick and the 3-minute challenge, as I said earlier, get your images into us if you'd like to be part of this. It'd be good to have some people's images that we've not looked at before. So how does it work? It's an image that I say we haven't seen beforehand. We try not to look at them beforehand. Obviously, we're going to end up getting a glimpse of them as we load them into Lightroom, but we try to do it as quick as possible so that what we do in the challenge is straight off the top of our heads. We try to come into it as clean as possible on there. And we have just 3 minutes to edit the image that's supplied. And it can be anything from portraits, architecture. We've had motor racing, a couple of motor racing ones in there, all different sorts. Have at least one landscape, one in there. Not that many landscapes, strangely. So let's have a look at Rick's live stream, 3-minute edit. Yeah, I've been completely thrown by that technical hitch at the beginning. Right, you watch Rick for 3 minutes. I'll pull myself together and be right back.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another 3-minute Lightroom edit challenge. My name's Rick Bradbury. I'm recording this separately for Ian, ready for his live stream. And today we are looking at another image sent in by Garry Platt. So I shall get my phone ready. Oh, it always goes to sleep. Here we go, 3-minute timer, and we will we'll hit that. Right, let's take a look at the image. No, again, don't want the taskbar. Right, here we go, and we have inside of a church or cathedral. Wow, that ceiling's high. They're amazing buildings in terms of how they're built. Oh, grief. Kind of makes you want to fall backwards when you look at that. Anyway, right, let's get to editing this. So we will reset the image, lens correction, and go to Adobe Standard. There we go. Right. Noise reduction off, and we'll take a quick look at the image. So, shot on a Sony of some sort, 30th of a second, ISO 500-8. Okay, I don't know whether this was shot handheld or not, but let's see where we are. So the focus is up on the ceiling, and we'll see what we can. That's a cool looking screen. Okay, I mean, sunlight's catching that, but that's not much we can do with that. Right, so let's see what we've got. I'm going to warm it up just a little bit. You see, as you warm it up, it brings out the ceiling a touch, because it's naturally warmer. I'm going to bring the highlights down, not too much because it just looks rubbish. You expect it to be bright out of the windows. A little bit of global contrast. Bring the shadows up just a touch. Don't want to bring them up too much. No, that's fine in there. We'll go a little bit work on the curves. On the curves. Maybe just a touch. It'll probably benefit for some localized work, but 3 minutes, not got time for that. So when I say localized, I mean with a brush. And we will just to bring out, so I don't want to do that because it just makes it flat. Again, I don't mind that the windows are a little bit bright, to be honest with you. And we will go with a little bit of texture, so it just tightens things up a little bit of clarity, and just a fraction of dehaze, and then we'll sharpen it because we're running out of time. There we go. Detail, masking, and we'll crank that sharpness up. 30 seconds left. Oh, it might work as a black and white. It could do contrast, but yeah, we need to keep the colour because of the windows. And that is the edit. And it's within the 3 minutes. Would you look at that? Yeah, stop it now. Right. Okay, we shall hand back to Ian, and I'll be back shortly with some feedback on the image.
Right, and we're back. Okay, so that was Rick's working on Garry's image of Ely Cathedral, and coming up shortly will be my version of the edit on there. So Q&A. I've seen one question come in about noise reduction in Lightroom. I'm not going to try and answer that tonight. I'd like to prepare that one so I've got an image to show it on, which I couldn't lay my hands on an image that will show it properly whilst doing the live stream. So I'll shelve that one. May not be next week, might be a week or so later, but I will definitely deal with it. I have added it onto my list. I keep a list of questions that I haven't yet answered, so it's gone onto there, and I'll deal with it in a future one on that. So that's that. I haven't seen any other questions in there, so if you have got any, please add them to the chat. Oh, why do I keep forgetting to change that slide? There is the delay on there, so please get them in before we start the next window for live Q&A. Otherwise, I'll be closing it down before I get the information. It's normally about 30 seconds, can be up to 2 minutes delay before what I say is heard by you. So we have had some issues with that in the past. Right, let's talk about tiny planets, which is what I'm doing as my theme for tonight as a replacement for the macro stuff. Now, this all started in terms of talking about tiny planets when Garry, whose image of Ely Cathedral we've just been looking at, posted some photos on the Facebook group. And he posted this image. Now, this particular image is one that we looked at the other week as part of the landscape photography. He'd shared it then. I quite liked it, and I still do. But he's done an edit on it, and it now looks like this. So he's converted it into one of these tiny planet things. And he asked the question, what do I think about this sort of excessive editing of images? And I quite like it. I like this sort of effect. I think it can be quite strong. I wouldn't want to do it obviously with every image, but used selectively, it can be very, very powerful. And you can take one type of image and make it into something quite surreal. And I'm just pausing because I'm seeing something in the chat. Right. Okay, I do know there was a question earlier on. I was looking for that but couldn't find it. Right, I will come back to that later, Michael. My apologies for missing it. Right, yeah, I do like this this sort of effect, and you can get some quite surreal images. So, for example, this image, which is an okay image, but I think even Garry would agree it's just a sort of fairly run-of-the-mill image. It's nice layers to it, but it's not one of the most spectacular sort of images. But when you do a tiny planets effect with it, you get something really quite special. And I think this really works. To me, it looks like the iris, like an eye, and the trees look like the veins coming out. And I think it's a cracking shot. Much, much better than the original on there. So I think there is a place for this type of image. So what I want to do now is go through the techniques involved in how you create them, because it's not actually as difficult as you might think. But there's just a few little things you need to be aware of with it. So I've got two possible images to look at. I'll do the easy one first, and as I'm doing this, please can you put in the chat whether you want me to do the difficult one as well. The difficult one is the one that I used for the thumbnail for this live stream. It's the one with the mosque on there, and that's a much more tricky one because everything is in the image just once, whereas what I'm going to show you with this particular one, which is Buenos Aires, if you look very carefully at it, you'll notice everything is duplicated in the image, and that's the easy way to do it. If you want to see the complicated way as well, then put it in the chat. I'll check that at the end of going through this, and if you want to see that, I'll then do it with the other one as well. Right, I need to bring up Photoshop. And here we go. So this is the image I'm going to work with. It's a skyline of Buenos Aires, obviously Argentina. So to prepare for this, there's various little steps we need to do. And if you're going to be doing these, it's worth thinking about your image to start with. What you want is something that's long and thin, really. Now this isn't quite, I would say this isn't quite thin enough and long enough for the effect to really work. But it also, I can solve that and solve another problem, because it's got to go round in a circle. So you've got to think about how you're going to join the two ends up on your image. So I'm going to do it by duplicating this and flipping one half of it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to look at the image and see if there's anything I need to clean up before I do that duplication. And I can see down at the bottom here, let me go full screen so you can see it, that there's just a couple of little details that do need sorting out. So I'm going to get a clone brush. Spot healing brush should do this, and if I just paint that out, and that's done, and I'm going to just zoom in on that bit at the bottom and along. I need a smaller brush for that. If I make a small brush and go down, that should deal with that. That's close enough. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be for what we're doing. So now I've done that, next thing I need to do is, this is currently the background layer. I want to promote it to being a layer in its own right. So Alt, double click on it, we'll make it layer 0 on there. And I now need to double the size of the canvas for it. So image, canvas size. Oh, and it's put the dialog box up on my other screen, and that's why I couldn't see it. So I'm just going to go to % and say 200%. We'll put that over onto one side and say OK. Let me just move that into there. Alt and click, go to the move tool, Alt and click duplicates the layer, and just position that. Now you can see I've got the two layers down here. If I flip the top layer, the top layer on there, so edit, transform, flip horizontal, that means we don't get a line down the middle here. That means it's nice and clean there, the transition with the sky. And in reality, it means that this edge here will join up with this edge over here. So the whole image will work. Of course, I'm just realizing something here, that my hotkeys that I use for controlling my screen are also ones I use within Photoshop. So that's why it keeps coming out of full screen on there. Never mind, we'll go back into full screen. And right, okay, so now I've done that, I need to flatten these two layers down or merge them. So layer, merge layers. Once I've done that, I've got to invert it. So I'm going to choose image, edit, transform, and rotate 180 degrees. So we've got that. So we're almost there now. We've done all the hard work at this point. So now it's just a case of applying the filter. And the filter is from the filter menu. We'll go full screen. Filter, distort, polar coordinates. And that does all the work for us. And we want rectangular to polar. So nice, straightforward. Hit OK. It goes off and... I missed a step. I need to distort this before I can do that. I need to make it a square image. I was thinking something looked a bit odd with it. Right, so image size, and what we do, we set the height to be the same as the width. So 11520. This is going to be a big one. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. It's getting there. Has it crashed? No, it's doing it. This poor laptop is having to do an awful lot of work when I'm running a live stream. So now you can see I have a square image, and that's the key step that I missed. So now filter, distort, polar coordinates, and hit OK. I possibly should have done this with a lower resolution image, but anyway, you can see with a high-res image that we end up with a planet with all the skyscrapers sticking out, which I think looks pretty cool on there. So I can crop that down if I want. Now, one other little tip that I do with these is I like, with this particular technique, you'll see it's completely symmetrical across. So this is mirrored with that and so on. So what I tend to do is well, if I hit Control-T for free transform, I tend to give it a little bit of a rotate. It just breaks that symmetry up a little bit so it doesn't look quite so obvious. So having done that, yeah, this should have been done with a lower res image. So now I can crop it, crop tool, and if I say 1:1, bring in on there, and on there, and that is the finished image. So that's how you would normally do it. So File, Save As, BA for Buenos Aires, Planet, and I'm going to just save it as a JPEG. Right, so having done that, let me go back and, oh, I haven't done it. It's got a dialog box on the wrong screen. Let me go and just check the chat and see what's going on in there. Right. Please do the complicated too. Right. Okay. Oh, we've got some gluttons. Right. Okay. Yeah. Let me just explain what the complicated one is. It's all about merging together those edges that don't meet. So let me pull that one up. Right. I've just noticed we've got an error message from YouTube, another one. It says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will be experiencing buffering. So my apologies if you are suffering from buffering. Nothing much I can do about it, I'm afraid, on there. Right, let me head back over to Photoshop, and I'll now do the complicated version on there, which is all about the preparation stage of it. So, Photoshop. Yep. So, File. Oh, no. My poor laptop, it's really struggling with the amount of windows I've got open on here. So File, Close. Yep. No, I don't want to save that. Just close it, will you? Like Photoshop, close. Do I want to save it? No. Right. Okay, so here's the one for the complicated one. This is the Grand Mosque in Monastir in Tunisia, and why I'm in crop mode I don't know. So remember one of the things I said before, we want an image that's long and thin. With this, I'm just going to crop it a little bit to make it a little bit more like that. So if I go into crop and just say, to clear the, there it is, clear that, and I just want a little bit of the foreground in there. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm looking for a point where I think I'm going to be able to join the two sides up. And you see we've got two palm trees which are cutting off there. I don't want that. If I crop those out, it will make my life a little bit easier when I come to try and join the two edges up. So if I do around about there. The other thing I'm looking at is I'm looking at these bushes. Are they about the same sort of height? And I think they are. So that'll do for my crop on there. Now, I'm going to do before, control double click to promote it to its own layer. I'm just not wanting to do it. Alt double click. What's going on? Oh, I see. It's done it up here again. Right. Right, so now it's its own layer. What I'm going to do with it is I'm going to cut this image in half. And I'm going to cut it in half, let's say about here. It doesn't have to be a true half, it just needs to be in two sections. Control X to delete one half of it, Control V to paste it back. Now it's pasted back, I'm going to swap these two sides over. So Control click to drag the other half over there. Control click to grab that one and join that onto there. So now the reason for doing that means I can see what that join's going to be between the two halves. And that's the bit I need to deal with. And you can deal with it after you've done the conversion into the tiny planet. But if you're using any form of clone stamping, it is so tricky to do that on a curve because the points don't match up. It's much easier to do it on a flat image. So I do that splitting in half and clean this up as best I can at this stage before I convert it into the planet. So first thing that needs doing, as I look at it, I can see that that bit of palm tree needs to go. So I'm going to just lasso that around there and edit content aware fill. I should get rid of that. And well, it looks like it's going to do something. Yeah, not brilliant on that. But it's done part of it. It doesn't matter. I'll go with that for it. Actually, no, I won't. I'll get rid of that. And what I'll do is I'm just going to merge those two layers together. Then that content aware fill will work a little bit better. Layers. Right. Merge the layers. Right. Now let's do that content aware fill. And this should work a lot better. Edit, content aware fill. It's thinking about it. Yep, it's got rid of that perfectly and given me a perfect straight line. So I'm going to say, okay, apply that. Okay. Control D to get rid of the selected area. The next thing I'm going to do with it is I need to just soften this down. So I get a paintbrush and what I'm doing, actually not the paintbrush, I want the clone stamp tool. I've got the opacity down very low or relatively low, about 50% we want it at. And I'm going to sample from both sides and sort of paint over. I've made sure the brush is particularly soft. Oh, went too far. Do it the other way around. Come from down here and move up. And I can just keep softening this area between the two. And it doesn't have to be perfect, as you'll see, but the more I can just sort of soften this all down, the better this will work. And oh, the top there. By having the low opacity, it just allows me to blend it a little bit easier than if I got a harsh brush, of painting full on. It just allows me just to do a few things like that, and it gradually gets there. I don't need to do too much at it. Now, probably need to do a little bit down on there. I'm just going to zoom right in so I can see what I'm doing on that bush. That's not too bad actually where that is. I do need to do a bit more. Reduce the size of the brush using the square bracket key. And I'm holding the Alt key to sample and then just paint over. Doesn't need to be perfect by any means. It just needs to get rid of those edges that happen to be around there. So anything I can do just to soften all that down. Do a little bit in the bushes around there to make that work. Now, I have to do a little bit of work around here. I just want to get rid, do a little bit on, whoa, not that. Let's get rid of there. And just the more I can soften those areas, the better, so that it doesn't look quite so awkward between the two. So if I just do something along, I'll grab a bit from over here, I think. Just paint that in across there. The fact is, all we're trying to do is to make sure that there isn't something that's going to draw the eye with the planet when it's created. Grab a bit more over there and just add that on. And there we go. I think that's sufficient. If I come out on there, I think that will do it for what we want. Now, I'd never present an image like that, but it's enough to work for what we need to do. I would probably spend a little bit more time on this, and so particularly around this area, but even that's not going to show up that much when we do the make it into the planet. So what do we need to do now? That's all on a separate layer. I need to merge those two layers together. Merge, 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 merge. I now need to make it a square image. So image, image size, and we will make the height the same as the width, which is 3776. Just allow you to see a little bit better what I'm doing on there. And if I zoom out, you'll be able to see the whole image on there. So again, it's distorted, which is what we want. So now, filter, distort, polar coordinates. Oh, I've done it again. I forgot to invert it. Right. Image. I always forget that. Edit, transform. Rotate through 180 degrees. Filter. Right. Distort, polar coordinates. There we go. I love the center pattern on that so that it's done with the floor. And you can see the finished image there. Now, where was that join? Well, the join was along here, but it's relatively indistinguished. So the final thing I like to do with this is I like to choose the angle of where something like this, the main feature is obviously the mosque, which direction is it going to point? So Control T, 0, so I've got the whole thing. and I'm just going to rotate it round. I think it looks best at that sort of angle where it's just off the top there. And it also helps hide that seam that we've got by doing that. And then finally, crop it down to a square. Ratio 1:1. And that is the finished image. The reason I said that one was the harder one, because of all that blurring and merging together and that extra step of cutting the image in half and moving them to either side so that you can see what the join's going to look like beforehand. Now, yeah, it's not perfect on that join. If I'd have spent a little bit more time on it, the original image that was on the thumbnail, when I did that, I spent more time making sure everything joined up on there. But for a live demo on a live stream, I didn't want to spend too long on that. So let me now check up on the chat and see what's been going on. I'm not going to bother saving. Oh, I just need to get out of Photoshop. Come on. No, don't want to save. Right, let's have a look in the chat, see what's been going on while I've been working. Right, various discussions about Olympus. Right, request for the complicated approach. Complicated, yeah. Yeah, a few asking for it. So saying not getting any buffering. Only saw it stutter when the laptop was trying to run the conversion to the Planet. Yeah, stuttered a little. Okay, so I'm glad you were able to watch, and the warning has disappeared from my screen now. So hopefully, now I've got rid of Photoshop, things should be a little bit better. So let's move on. 3-minute challenge. So this time it's my edit of Gary's image. So let me play that in, and I can have a drink just to get my voice back. Hello, welcome to another 3-minute Lightroom challenge. I have 3 minutes to do an edit of an image. This image is supplied by Garry Platt. So let me get my timer started. 3 minutes from now. So let's go over to the develop module and see what we've got. Right, we have the interior of a church or cathedral. Already quite a nice image. Reset. Ah, right, there must have been some XMP information with it. Right, okay, so there's the original. All right, first thing that I need to do with that, as ever, lens corrections on there. That's made a bit of a difference already. Next, I want to sort of really bring up those shadows we've got. So let's bring the shadows right up. Bring the exposure up is helping as well, but that means I'm just going to bring those highlights down to try and preserve the detail in the highlights. So that's not too bad. Now, I want to concentrate on the details in here, and if I can bring that up with a bit of clarity, maybe a bit of texture with it. How's that looking? That's looking a little bit over, a little too hot on some areas, so those highlights need to come down further. That's better. Exposure down a bit more, shadows up a bit more. That's a bit more like it. Now, what colour temperature in here? This is a tricky one. I'm going to sort of go with, let's see what happens with tungsten. Oh, horrible. I don't like that. I'll go with the daylight then. That's way too orange, but I'm going to bring that back just a little bit until I get a nice look. I've still got 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the clock. Quite like that, actually. Does it need a crop? I'm not sure it does, actually. That looks good in camera. Have a look. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Do I want to try and straighten anything? I quite like the converging verticals on it. Don't want to do that either. Vibrance. Bring the vibrance up a little bit on it. Maybe a tad on the saturation, but again, I don't want to do much. Are we sharp? Wonderfully sharp on there. So, do I need to do any noise reduction on it? Maybe just a little bit. I've got 20 seconds left, 27 seconds. So, a little bit of noise reduction, but don't need to do much. Sharpening. Bring that up, the radius up, and then a little bit of masking. Hold the Alt key down, and we can see where we're applying the sharpening to, because we just want it on the edges. So something like that. And you know what? I think that's about it. Right, stop the clock. Okay, so that was my edit. I ran out of time. Was there anything else I was going to do with it? I was just getting to the stage of pondering whether it needed a vignette on there. So let's have a look whether it would have helped with a vignette. Just bring the edges down a little bit. Yeah, I think just that slight vignette to just even things out a little bit, because the edges are a little bit bright. That would be about all I would have done other than that. Lovely image. I'll give my feedback properly as part of the live stream. So at this point, I'll just hand back to the live stream. See you there. And I'm back. Right, okay. So we'll do the feedback a little bit later on. We've got some other feedback. I was sent an image by Peter during the week. He suggested it as a 3-minute edit, but I think actually this one I'm better just dealing with by myself, because I just need to talk about a few things. I think rather than editing, I will do some editing on it, Peter, and show you with that. I think we just need to talk a little bit about the composition more than the editing with it. So it's an image, by the looks of it, somewhere in France, a chateau. I'm going to go over into Lightroom with it, and I'll talk about it in there. I think is probably the easiest way. So has that gone over? No. Yep, right, we're over there. Okay. I think with this, I can understand why you want to photograph the location. It's an interesting choice of subject, and I like that you've chosen an interesting building to photograph. But I think we need to think a bit about the composition on it. I can guess from down here that you're restricted by a wall that's in the way, and therefore you can't get the rest of the building in there. And I think that's a bit of a problem with this image, to be perfectly honest with it, that the composition doesn't quite work as it stands. It's a lovely building, but it's not quite there as it should be. What could you do? Now, I don't know the setup there, but I would like to see a bit more sort of foreground to it. If this is a wall that you could get close to, maybe put the camera over the wall. I've done that before now, where I know there's a scene behind there. I have no idea what it looks like. I've actually stood there. Actually, can't. If I do that, my hands completely disappear. With the camera above my head, just photographing over the wall. It's all very paparazzi style, but that could help with it. The other thing about this building is the angle to photograph from. To me, there's two interesting bits to this building. There is this nice roof here, but I'm really interested with the round tower, but it's hidden by the building that's down here. So I'd like to try and find a position where I could get both of those in that works a little bit better. Additionally, we've got perhaps a little bit too much sky in there. I don't think the sky is adding much to the image. So what can we do with this image? And I'll be honest, I've not looked at it much because I know you sent it in as a 3-minute challenge, so I didn't want to sort of work on it beforehand and work out exactly what I was going to do with it. But I've got a couple of thoughts. So if I got an image like this that I was trying to rescue, the first thing I would do is obviously I'd enable my lens corrections, as I always do, and it's not picked anything up on there, so okay, forget that. I'm not going to get anywhere with that. Next thing I would want to do is to try and correct those verticals. Now, I'll correct the verticals before I crop. I'm going to crop on here, but doing it beforehand means I've got the maximum amount of space to work with. So, transform. I usually just hit auto to start with on that and see what it comes up with. Actually, that's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad, and that has helped. But I think, having seen a few other things on here that aren't quite straight, I think I might be better off going to guided with it. So I'm going to just draw in 2 verticals and on there. So I'm going to do a vertical along that side, and then I want to try and find another vertical as far away as possible. I could potentially use the drain pipe down here, and that's corrected everything there, and already it's looking better for doing that, but it's slightly skew whiffed, so I'm going to try and correct the horizontal as well. So if I draw a horizontal in with this guided approach, ooh, that's really twisted things at the bottom doing that. So I'm going to put another one in down at the bottom to counteract it, and that's the 4 I'm allowed. It won't let me do anymore. So that's not too bad now. Now I think that's really helped with the image, and that to me is now much more powerful. Partly because we've got rid of that little bit of wall at the bottom. The tower's looking a little bit more prominent, but it's looking a little bit distorted. So I think the solution to that is change the aspect ratio. If I just bring things in just a fraction on the aspect ratio, I think that's working. Now I need to crop this. So R on the keyboard will give me my crop tool. I bring that in, and over here, I think I'd like to keep a bit of that window at the bottom. I don't need all the sky on there, so I do that. Now, the question is, at the bottom here, how far up do I go with it? I'm tempted to try here and see what that looks like. I like the sides. I'm not sure about this triangle sticking up there, so I'm going to go back, come down. Yeah, I think that works better. I'm just going to go full screen so you can see this. That little bit of light there, the guttering, I think gives context to that triangle that we can see, which is the roof. So I think that's the first things I would do. Now I've got an image that's proportional and corrected, what else can I do with it? Well, I would say, I think a little bit of a boost to the exposure on there, a little bit of contrast. Now, actually that's not too bad. Now, white balance on this, it was as shot, I've got auto or custom on it. Let's see what auto gives me. A bit warm, but often a good starting point. And just go down very slightly. Yeah, don't dislike that. Right, what else? It's fairly sharp already. I suspect there's been some sharpening in camera on there because it was a JPEG. But if we go down to detail, I'm going to whack in a whole load of sharpening. I'm just going to zoom in so I can see it. and bring the radius up. So way too much on there. Bringing it back. I'm getting halos around the edges there, which I don't want. So I just want to bring that back. Yeah, that's as far as I can go with it without getting halos. And then just going to mask it. I hold the Alt key down. We can see what we're getting, which areas are being affected with it. So I don't want to sharpen the sky. Oh, I haven't even got my hands on the keyboards and it's doing it. It's so far behind. Yeah, something like that. Again, one of the things with sharpening, the fact that it's a JPEG image, the sharpening's already happened in camera. So anything I do is likely to over sharpen it. Final touches to it that I would do would be just to boost the vibrance. I'd like to just get a little bit more of that blueness in the sky on there by doing that. And you know, I think that's about it. Do I need to raise the shadows a little bit? No, I don't think I do. Everything's well within scope on the histogram. So I was trying to go full screen. Let's go with that. So that's our finished image on there. That's what I've been able to come up with, Peter, for it. Now, let me go back to chat, escape from that. Right, minimize. Lost my mouse. Oh, it's all going wrong tonight. Right. Okay, so yeah. So that was what I've been able to do with it, Peter. It's not brilliant with it. I think it just needs a little bit more work up front on that one. I like the building. I think we've been able to get something from it. Sorry, it's not a glowing report for it, but I just want to say thank you for submitting it, for me to have a look at and to have a go with and to have a play with. Right, okay, looking at the chat, Garry Platt asks, content-aware fill instead of crop. Oh, is this to do with the planets and filling in the bits around the outside? Yeah, you could do that. I tend to crop if I can, rather than generating. So yeah, one thing or the other on that, on there. Right, let's moving on. I just want to sort of highlight a few images in from the Facebook group that people have been submitting. I'd asked last week, because I thought this was going to be the macro one, submit your macro images, and a few images have been posted this week which are really worthy of a shout out. Ben, who accepted my challenge last week to create some landscape images, submitted some of his macro work. Now, he said he hadn't got a macro lens, but he'd worked with some flowers and a mirror and off-camera flash to create a couple of cracking images of these flowers and their reflections. Really like them, Ben. I just want to give you a shout out on that. They're really nice shots, and it shows that you're not being held back by your equipment. You haven't got a macro lens, so you found a different solution. And this comes back to something that, if you haven't watched my video on the 7 deadly sins of photography, I talk about this in that video on greed. About, we tend to think, oh, we're always after the next bit of gear, whereas what we actually need to do is explore what we've currently got and push it to the absolute limits. So absolutely well done with this, Ben. Two fantastic images, and I really like this one as well. That reflection just makes it work, and thank you for sharing them on the stream. So macro photos for everyone else in the Facebook group, ready for next week. It will be macro next week, I promise. Talking about macro, Terry submitted several really good ones on there. I just wanted to pick one of them up. I just quite like this. There's something really special about it. It's I think it was under a group of dandelion clocks with water droplets on, and this one must be absolutely tiny. If that's a single water droplet, I love the colours in there. It's almost a tiny planet in its own right, this. So that's why I picked this one and just thought I'd share it and just talk about it. Really nice image there. Love the lighting in the background with it, Terry. The composition is good, that it's not quite in the centre, it's just off. So it all just works on there. So well done on that one there, on Terry. Next, I want to just talk about some images from Garry that he's posted. Now, I don't know whether Gary's watching the stream. I don't think he's a regular on here, although I did say that I was going to talk about them tonight. So, I'm going to pop over back into Lightroom to talk about these. So just give me a moment to do that. Get that set up. And right, yep. So develop module. Right, yeah, it's 3 different images that Garry has submitted. And the reason I wanted to talk about these is because they've all been created on the mobile phone. And Garry had said he'd got a new phone and wanted to test out the camera on it. He'd gone out to create some images. And so it was just an experiment. I've picked 3 from the set that that you submitted, Garry, just to talk about. The colours on them, I think they're just a tad oversaturated. I know in the Facebook post you commented that you'd spotted a setting on there that is sort of chroma enhance or something like that, which I think is over boosting the saturation a little bit with some of them. This one, the one that we've got on the screen at the moment, I think it works fine on. The others, I think, are just that little bit too much. The only thing I would say about this is just watch the crop on there, watch your framing on it. And with this one, I think, I'm not going to do things like correcting verticals on it, but just a slight move in on there, which will keep the aspect ratio that you started with. Just moves one of the vehicles out of there and it just tidies the image up. But it's a nice shot, nice framing, nice use of the rule of thirds, approximately where you've got that with the lead-in lines and the curves and the lamppost there. So it works nicely on that. Moving over to the next one. This is one of the ones which I felt was a little bit oversaturated on it. But again, we've got a nice composition here. I like the way you've used the towpath as a lead into it. That works nicely. The bridge line is following the rule of thirds. It's a shame about this building at the background there. One tip with something like this, where you've got a little bit of a building sticking out there, is if you crouch down and maybe just go down as low as you can, or take the camera down or camera phone down as low as you can, you might be able to hide that building roof by the wall of the bridge. So think of something like that, which makes it a much cleaner image. That I think is the thing on there. But I do like the use of the canal leading in on there. So that was that. Now this one, well done for trying it as a vertical, but I think this is actually a horizontal image. If I go to crop, now in Lightroom, a little trick for the Lightroom users, if you're cropping, if you hit the X key, it turns the crop through 90 degrees. So that keeps the same aspect ratio, So this is what it would have looked like had you turned the camera around. And I think that's a stronger image. Again, it's a little bit oversaturated in places with it. I think turning that chroma enhance off might improve the sort of shots. But I think that's a stronger image. Why? Because this whole area down here is not adding anything to the shot. And we've got that information, same below there. We could play around with this and decide where we're going to put it. Maybe at about there, I don't know. So there's lots of possibilities on that, but I think what you got here was a horizontal image, not a vertical one. But it's a nice shot, it's a lovely canal, well captured, and the quality of it for a phone, I'm not going to complain at that. So well done for having a go. Thank you for submitting them, and thank you for allowing me to comment and give you some feedback on them, Garry. Hope you are watching, or if not, you're watching it on the replay, and I hope you found the advice helpful. So, back to where we were. So now, right, I'm just checking for anything else that's come in on the chat. Yeah, one dandelion clock. Yeah, Garry is asking Terry what lens he uses for his macros. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear that, Terry. So do pop that in the chat for us on there. I'm preparing a video in connection with next week that's going to be my blog post for the week at the request of Loz, who asked me to do my top 5 tips on macro photography. And I'll talk a little bit about lenses for macro photography in that. So you'll get some of my thoughts during the week on lenses for that, Garry, on there. But I'd be interested to hear what Terry has to say as well. So let's move along. 3-minute challenge, image feedback, Rick's feedback, and then I'll give mine.
Okay, Garry, thanks again for sending the image in. And we will do a before and after, a before and after, a before and after, a before and after. So I've got a little warmer on that one. There's been more work done, I think, on your version, because again it's brought in the XMP locally to bring out details in the ceiling, which is fine. You can absolutely do that. I don't know whether this was shot handheld. It may potentially well have been done versus lots on a tripod. Sometimes in these places you can't use a tripod. I mean, there's enough of it in focus with 24mm, but I think it could have benefited from being locked on a tripod and shot around 5.6 to f8, just to tighten the bottom section of the image a little bit. It's interesting. There's more compositions that you could find within there, I'm sure, and I'd like to have a crack at that with a 14mm on full frame or something along those lines, or an ultra wide, or even a tilt shift. But yeah, it's a very, very interesting building. Like I say, it's usually when you visit these places, if you're walking around, from memory, when I've gone to the cathedral in Liverpool and it's open to the public, you're fighting getting people in this shot, especially if you frame low and high. And if you stood up, you can tilt the camera a bit and get people's heads out of the shot possibly. But there's loads of little details you can pick up on in here. So overall, it works quite well, to be honest with you. If we bring up the crop tool, feels balanced well for a straight up shot. It works well. There are other compositions definitely within there. I've shot these kind of things before, literally lay on the floor because I didn't have a tripod or you couldn't use one, shooting straight up. So just straight up to the ceiling detail. That can work as well. But you know, perfectly happy with what you've done with this. Obviously you've benefited with some more work, localized brushing in the ceiling. You can bring out quite a bit of detail doing that in raw files these days for sure. A bit of shadows. Try not to bring out too much in the way of shadows when you do brush work on a local area. And I've seen people tend to do that a lot. They do it in wedding work as well, where they want to see the shadows underneath the chair. Why? And it just looks muddy, really. But you could totally do a lot with this and pull more detail out of the raw file. And you could even, if you had more time to kind of stabilize the camera, if you could, and you had more time to set it up, you could bracket shots for maybe some kind of HDR, because there's a ton of detail in, you know, these windows, certain elements of them, depending on where the light is on the day is blown out, but tons of detail that you can pull out with a bracketed shot for HDR. So good stuff, and they're always very interesting to visit, these buildings, and amazing structures. I don't visit these kind of places a lot myself. I'm not particularly into religious history or anything like that. It's not my bag, but the buildings, you can certainly appreciate the ingenuity and the detail within them. Amazing work. Like, it's just massive. And when you look up, especially when you look up to the ceiling, when you stood down below at these things, it kind of makes you feel a bit sick and want to fall backwards because they're that high. But thanks again for sending that, Tim. Look forward to seeing some more, and let's hand back to Ian.
Right, and we're back. So, yeah, my thoughts on this. I love it. It's a lovely image. If I just do the before and after on here, notice the big thing that changes. I'm going to go full screen. You'll see it a little bit better. You see, the main thing that's between my edit and yours, Garry, lens corrections. Don't forget to apply lens corrections to your images, because it really does make a big difference on there. What's quite interesting about this shot is 3 completely different approaches to how it should be edited. I've gone for a very HDR-esque approach. And it was interesting that Rick commented about you could do this as an HDR, and that's the sort of direction I took it in. I've managed to pull back a lot of the detail, because if I zoom in on the window, you see most of it's there, although some of it I think has been lost in my attempts. And again up here, I can see that, yeah, there's some detail been lost on there. So if it was done as a proper HDR, we would have had even more detail in those areas on it. Composition wise, I can see where you're coming from with the angle that you're shooting. It's not the angle I would have chosen, and I do a fair bit of this sort of work when I'm traveling. Is the column that's cutting across here, I would tend to either keep it out or just go the other side of it, so that I've got the full rows of the architecture there. Or, more likely, I would come a little bit further back so that the column acts as a lead-in line all the way through. So it's coming in from the column, the same way that one is, but I would use this column to sort of bring me into the image and try that. You'd have to play around with your angle, because you don't want to lose anything much of the rows and the ceiling on there with it. Exposure wise is great. Focus and depth of field is absolutely fine on that. That's sharp, certainly more than sharp enough for anything you're going to do with that image on it. So yeah, it's a lovely shot. I'm presuming you will have done the usual thing. You'll have worked the scene, tried lots of different angles. There is one angle that I'd love to see for this. I don't know whether you shot it, and that is to get directly below this center point here and shooting up, so you see the true star effect of that ceiling. You don't get to see the stained glass windows, but I think the star within a star, surrounded by the columns and everything leading in, could be quite an interesting view as well on there. Other than that, I've not got much else to say about it, other than I really do like it, and the things and the suggestions I've made are nitpicks, just to try and make you think about alternatives rather than anything say that doesn't work on there. So again, thanks for sharing it, and thanks for sharing all your images, Gary. I've been really pleased with to see the sort of stuff that you have shared. You've kind of stolen the show tonight, really, with their 3-minute edit and your planet images, which inspired the planet part. So thank you very much for your contribution on that. So right, where are we up to? Yes, Q&A. What have we got in chat? That's a good question. What have we got in chat? Let me get my screen back. Oh, come on, PC. I want my window back. Right, okay, yes, chat window. Right. Terry has answered the question that his lens was the Sony f2.8 90mm macro lens. Couldn't get directly below because of the staging that was there, though. Good idea. Right. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for those. The question I've had in chat earlier that I missed, and I do want to deal with this one. It's an interesting little question, actually. I think it was Michael who asked the question, who said, "How clean does a sensor need to be acceptable?" Let me go right back to the beginning. It's got to be in here somewhere. I can't find this. My apologies, whoever asked it. If it's not Michael, my apologies on that. Yeah, how clean does a sensor have to be? It's like asking the question of how clean does your lounge need to be for visitors? There's no. It's what is acceptable to you and acceptable to the people who are going to visit or see your image on there. So ideally, a clean sensor would have 0 dust spots on there. And that's what you should always aim for. It should be absolutely perfect. Now, sometimes it's not possible to do that. And sometimes you may have 1 or 2 very tiny dust bunnies on there that are only ever show up when you go to f22 and it just happens to be on the sky. How long do you spend trying to clean a sensor? I mean, I tend to clean my own. I've only once ever had a camera sensor professionally cleaned, and that was my 5D Mark I, fairly recently actually, because that thing is an absolute swine to clean. I had a lot of trouble with it historically, so I got it done professionally. So I would say, how long do you want to spend cleaning them up in post-production? If you're willing to deal with the odd 1 or 2, and that's not an issue for you, then 1 or 2 spots is acceptable. If you don't want to spend any time cleaning any dust spots off your sensor, then the only acceptable answer is no dust spots. So I hope that answers the question for you about how clean it needs to be. I just spotted another comment about dust spots from Terry. Converted a colour image to black and white and suddenly 20 dust spots became obvious. Right, this is something, I'm gonna go back to no I'm not, yes I am, I've still got Lightroom open, it's not closed yet. Let me find an image. Great. And let me find one of Terry's images. Sorry for picking on you with this, Terry, and I honestly don't know whether this is what's going to happen with this one. Maybe this won't show anything, but if I go into the develop module, there is a trick for seeing where the dust spots are on there. So if I go hit Q, which is the adjustment, the spot removal tool, and visualize spots, and it does show where they are, and there's not a one in there. Well done. Let's move on to some other. Yeah, here we go. There's a dust spot right up at the top on this image of Garry's on there. The camera phones won't have them. I don't know whether that will. No, nice and clean on there. So that sort of technique does show up. So Terry, if you need to check, that is a good way of checking for your dust spots on there. Right, let's get rid of that. Oh, bother, that hadn't shown up on the screen. Right. Oh. It's not my night tonight, is it, folks? Right, that's now up on the screen. What I was trying to show, if I go back to here, you can just see a dust spot on the screen up at the top here. It's this little halo, and you do it when you're in spot removal tool, which is Q is the shortcut key, or you do it up here and you click on visualize spots, and any dust spots will turn up as little rings on the image. Right, come back. Oh, I'm sorry, it's all going to pieces today, isn't it? Right, I think that's the only thing I've got in chat on there, on the thing. Ah, Terry's saying he moved to mirrorless, and seems to have had no more dust spots. Oh, right, okay. Didn't know that was some. Oddly, I'd have thought mirrorless would have been more likely to get them, simply because you haven't got a mirror in front of your sensor. Anyway, don't know on that. Right, okay, let's move on. We're just about at the end of this. Has there been any new images put in the Facebook group? Let me have a look on there. And can't see anything new that's gone in there posted in my notifications. So I normally get notified if anything goes in there, and I can't see anything either on that. So I think time to wrap up. Yeah. Okay, thanks for watching and thanks for sticking with it, folks. I'm sorry this one's just been absolute chaos tonight. It happens. I will be back on form for next week, promise. I will work really hard to get next week's nice and smooth. We will start without a technical hitch. Come on, I've done the last 3 or 4 weeks without any, so let's hope I don't have any more on there. My thanks to Rick for taking part and doing the 3-minute edit challenge. For everyone who's taken part, particular thanks tonight to Garry for supplying images for all sorts of things on there. I hope you found it helpful, and as ever, please subscribe, please comment, and please like. Go and hit that like button now. You know you want to. It does help, and the subscribe will mean you don't miss any future live streams. Particularly important when something goes wrong at the beginning, because when that going live starts working again, then you get the instant notification. When something like that drops out and comes back, on the coming back, you get a notification. So next time we will be doing the focus stacking and macro. We're looking at that. So any more macro photos, please add them to the Facebook group ready for next week, and I'll pick up some of those to talk about on the thing. So until next week, keep making great photos, and thanks for watching. Right, time to do my fake ending, real ending for the cut down version when I do the edit. Thanks for watching this cut down version of In Studio Live. The full version will now be available in my Academy. So if you want to watch that, you'll need to join the Academy. Details are on the screen there. It's only £6 a month or £60 a year. And you'll have the archive of past live streams there, along with lots of tutorials, lots of inspiration sheets, lighting diagrams, and lots of other things to help improve your photography. So pop over to the website and sign up today. Thanks for watching, and until next time folks, keep making great photos. Bye for now.